I'm Ryan Johnson. This is your Barbados Today Evening News Update for Tuesday, October 31st, 2017. Glad you could join us. A fresh warning from the acting governor of the Central Bank of Barbados, Cleviston Haynes, that the economy cannot afford a double-digit pay increase for civil servants. He made the comments today while delivering a report on the island's economic performance for the first 9 months of the year. Though recording 1.4% economic growth for the period, Haynes reported that international foreign reserves were still falling, among other ills, and cautioned that the government had to keep a tight check on its own expenses. The National Union of Public Workers has been demanding a 23% wages hike for its members, while the Barbados Workers Union have been pressing for a 15% hike.
It seems to me that when you talk about increasing wages, that given our overall fiscal situation, you need to be looking, therefore, at savings elsewhere, because when you increase your wages bill, you don't increase the amount of resources available to finance it. And one of the fundamental issues we face at present is our ability to adequately finance our expenditures. So from the central bank's perspective, we would not want to see anything done that would impact on the government's ability to finance the expenditures that become due. Now, as we said in the past, this is a matter which obviously the government and the unions will have to discuss, but taking our overall macroeconomic perspective, we would not want any shocks that represent a worsening in the fiscal situation as we go forward.
The acting governor also used the occasion to announce a further increase in the level of government papers commercial banks are required to hold by law. This comes despite the increasing resistance from the private sector, including financial institutions, to take on government debt. Back in May, in his review, Haynes announced that commercial banks would be required to hold 15% of their domestic deposits in stipulated securities, up from 10%. That took effect from June 15, 2017.
Effective December 1, 2017, commercial banks will be required to hold 18% of their domestic deposits in stipulated securities. And from January 1, 2018, the banks will be required to hold 20% of their deposits in stipulated securities. Now, this is the second increase for the year and complements the fiscal initiatives introduced by the Minister of Finance in his financial statement and budgetary proposals earlier in the year. The cash reserve requirement for commercial banks remains unchanged at 5%, and the reserve requirements for deposit-taking trusts and finance companies and merchant banks also remain unchanged.
Meanwhile, the National Union of Public Workers, they're threatening industrial action because government has failed to respond to 2 letters issued on October 17th and 25th requesting a date for a meeting to restart wages talks. In a release issued this evening, NUPW General Secretary Ralston Smith said the Ministry of the Civil Service had been given until today to respond to the union's request, and to date no acknowledgement has been received. The statement further stated that the National Union of Public Workers National Council at its October 17th meeting directed the union to take the necessary action to bring the parties to the table if the Ministry of the Civil Service failed to respond to its call for a meeting. In other news, Barbados Labour Party Shadow Attorney General Dale Marshall is warning that the alleged assault of Police Commissioner Tyrone Griffith over the weekend is strong evidence that respect for law and order is at an all-time low. Yesterday, 39-year-old Dwayne Carlo Griffith of Crab Hill St. Lucie was remanded to Dodds after he appeared in court to answer to the charges of obstructing the police commissioner in the execution of his duty, resisting him and assaulting him. On Saturday, the top cop was reportedly speaking to a man about allegedly breaking the law when Griffith intervened and allegedly committed the offences. Marshall tells Barbados Today the incident could possibly give the criminal element the impression that police officers were no longer off limits.
We can already sense that there is some disrespect from the average Barbadian to the police on a day-to-day basis. But to come to this level tells us that, you know, we've gone really, really far down. I am concerned about a lot of things. I can't speak about the incident. I know what I heard, but there are several things that are troubling. I don't know that the Commissioner of Police should have found himself in a position where he should be reporting to deal with any kind of disturbance. Not that a police officer, whether you are at the top or at the bottom, should not be interacting, as the case may be, but it is troubling to me that at that time of the night, a Commissioner of Police feels that he needs to come out and fill a breach where obviously you have a station nearby and they should have been in a position to deal with it.
Barbados and the People's Republic of China, they've signed an agreement aimed at reducing the island's $800 million food import bill. Education Minister Ronald Jones says under the arrangement, 40 million Barbados dollars will go towards developing agriculture and agro-businesses at the Hope Plantation and Duke's Plantation, both in St. Lucie. The project will be managed by the Ministry of Education.
The whole issue of ensuring that we're able to feed our people, reduce our import bill substantially, give young citizens an opportunity to become part of the process of feeding themselves, their families, and the country as a whole. As you would know, the Barbados food import bill is quite substantial. I believe it is over almost $800 million. That is a lot of money to be spending on the importation of food. So if we are able, through the efforts and the activities of the training and development of persons to work in this very much needed area, if we're able to bring land into production and to turn primary products into secondary or tertiary products, this will help reduce that bill.
To sport in action, where the West Indies took a first innings lead in the second test against Zimbabwe, scoring 374 for 7 at stumps. This is despite Terence Powell missing out on his century on day 3 at the Queen's Sports Club in Bulawayo. The opener, having resumed overnight on 43, reached 90 before fending off a ferocious bouncer from Christopher Mpofu to gully, where Craig Everine took a superb catch. That left the tourists 163 for 4 in response to Zimbabwe's 326. And though Shai Hope made 40 and Ralston Chase 32, they slipped to 230 for 7 as Sikandar Raza took 5 for 82. Shane Dowridge and Jason Holder arrested the slump in style, however putting on an unbroken 144 for the 8th wicket before the close of play. Wicketkeeper Dowridge ended the day on 75 not out and captain Holder on 71, with the pair hitting 15 fours before them, and Holder hammering Raza for a huge straight 6.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Join us from November 16th to 19th, 2017 for the Barbados Food and Rum Festival, where acclaimed Barbadian chefs and mixologists are joined by Chef Jean-Georges of the US, Chef Tom Akins of the UK, Chef Chris De La Rosa of Canada to create dining experiences to delight the senses. Visit ticketpal.com and all TicketPal locations to get your tickets, and visit foodandrum.com for more information.
In regional news now, police in St. Lucia are promising a firm response to a recent uptick in homicides in the country. So far for the year, there have been 47 murders. Acting Deputy Police Commissioner Milton Desire says authorities will be leaving no stone unturned in their attempt to solve the cases.
Our statistics would indicate most of these incidents are gun-related, and it involves firearms. It's disputes over firearms, drugs, ammunition. The police, as I said, will continue our strategies in order that we solve these situations. Now, not all our strategies that I could put out there for security reasons, but one of the strategies that probably it may affect even law-abiding citizens is our traffic checks. We will be conducting some traffic checks, and with a view of finding some criminal element.
And finally, in international news, at least 8 people have been killed and 12 injured in New York after the driver of a truck mowed down people on a cycle path in Lower Manhattan. A 29-year-old man who emerged from the vehicle was shot by police and arrested. Lawmen urged people to avoid the area as a major emergency operation got underway. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio said it was a cowardly act of terror aimed at innocent civilians.
Based on the information we have at this moment, this was an act of terror, and a particularly cowardly act of terror aimed at innocent civilians, aimed at people going about their lives who had no idea of what was about to hit them. We, at this moment, based on the information we have, we know of 8 innocent people who have lost their lives and over a dozen more injured. We know that this action was intended to break our spirit, but we also know New Yorkers are strong, New Yorkers are resilient, and our spirit will never be moved by an act of violence, an act meant to intimidate us. We have been tested before as a city very near the site of today's tragedy, and New Yorkers do not give in the face of these kinds of actions.
And that's news, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. Also subscribe to our e-paper or email updates and like us on Facebook. We're also on Izumi Media in bus terminals and Screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you. You can also listen in to Mix 96.9 FM for more. I'm Ryan Jeltz. Have a good evening.